What you're experiencing right now is not what your mind assumes it is. You believe you're simply watching a video, that you made a conscious decision to click, to listen, to engage with something that appeared in your feed. But that's only the surface. What's actually happening is far more intricate. The quantum field, the unified intelligence permeating all layers of reality, has been tracking your frequency, reading the subtle movements of your awareness, responding to the quiet elevation happening within you. And what you're interacting with isn't just a video. It's a response, a transmission, a mirror being held up so you can finally perceive a truth about yourself that you're now ready to witness. The quantum field doesn't operate through ordinary cause and effect. It isn't mechanical where you act and then reality follows. It functions through resonance, through coherent frequency matching, through consciousness recognizing itself across what seems like separation. You didn't stumble onto this message by chance. The field brought it to you in this exact moment because your vibration has crossed a threshold, a point where recognition becomes possible, where activation can take place, where a deeper transformation can begin. Reflect on how you arrived here. What sequence of small moments carried you to this point? Maybe you were searching for something unrelated and this appeared. Maybe someone sent it to you at the perfect time. Maybe it showed up in your recommendations during a moment when you felt something you couldn't describe but needed to understand. None of that was random. It was synchronicity in motion, the quantum field arranging timing, aligning circumstances, orchestrating the path so precisely that it seems almost invisible. Your consciousness was calling for this long before your mind realized you were asking for anything at all. Right now, as you take in these words, something subtle is happening in your energy field, something you may sense but can't fully articulate yet. A recognition, a resonance, a quiet, yes, something about this is true. It rises from deeper than emotion, deeper than thought, from the place where awareness recognizes itself directly. That recognition isn't coming from the sentences you're reading. The words are merely carriers. What's being transmitted is frequency. And that frequency is aligning with something dormant within you, awakening something ancient, summoning a part of you that has been waiting for this exact moment to unfold. Can you feel it? That slight quickening, that gentle stirring beneath the surface? That sense that every challenge, every question, every moment of searching has been preparing you for this point? This is the quantum field responding to your frequency. This is consciousness meeting itself through the appearance of dialogue, through the illusion of teacher and student, through the beautiful fiction of separateness that allows the one to experience itself as many. Mystics have spoken this truth for centuries. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. But what they rarely explained is that the teacher isn't an outside authority with secret knowledge. The teacher is the quantum field itself, appearing in whatever form matches the student's vibration, offering the transmission the student's consciousness is capable of receiving. And right now, it appears here, as this moment, speaking through this message, not to give you something new, but to remind you of what your deeper self already knows. Sometimes it appears as a person, sometimes as a book, sometimes as an experience, sometimes as a crisis, and sometimes, like now, as something that looks like a video but is actually the universe speaking directly to you through the language of resonance. The title told you not to skip, not as manipulation or artificial urgency, but because if you scroll past this, if you treat it like just another piece of content, you'll miss the window that's open for you right now. Not because the window won't open again, it will, but because you've reached a very specific frequency at this exact moment, and the quantum field is responding to that frequency with this precise transmission. If you skip it, you don't lose everything. But you do delay the activation that's trying to unfold, the recognition that's trying to rise, the transformation that's trying to begin. Take a breath, not a shallow, unconscious breath, but a deep one that fills your entire body. Let it move into the places where you've been carrying tension, where doubt has been sitting, where you've questioned whether real transformation is possible for you. And as you breathe, notice this. The breath itself is part of the response. This moment of reading is part of the transmission. Everything happening right now is the quantum field arranging itself around your frequency, delivering exactly what you need in the exact form you need it at the exact moment you are finally ready to receive it. You are not watching something external. You are experiencing the quantum field, reflecting your own consciousness back to you, revealing something about yourself, awakening something within you that recognizes the truth beneath the words. What's happening here isn't new information but ancient remembering. It isn't learning but recognition. It isn't becoming something new but uncovering what has always been true and temporarily hidden. The quantum field is responding directly to your frequency. And what happens next depends entirely on whether you recognize this for what it actually is. Not a video, but a mirror. Not content, but consciousness. Not teaching, but transmission. Everything from this moment forward is the field continuing to respond, continuing to reflect, continuing to deliver exactly what your frequency is calling for. And if you're still here, if you haven't skipped, if something has held your attention all the way to this point, then your frequency is calling for something profound, something real. Something that will shift not only the way you think, but the way you perceive, the way you exist, the way you relate to reality itself. Before we go deeper, you need to understand what frequency actually means within the context of consciousness and quantum reality. This isn't metaphor, and it isn't poetic spirituality. This is physics, measurable, demonstrable, scientifically grounded physics that most people never learn because it destabilizes the materialist worldview that has shaped modern culture for centuries. Everything in existence is vibration. Everything is frequency. Your body isn't solid matter, it's an electromagnetic field vibrating at specific frequencies that create the illusion of solidity. Your thoughts aren't abstract ideas, they are electromagnetic signals firing across neural networks and radiating measurable frequencies beyond your skull. Your emotions aren't just feelings, they are coherent or incoherent oscillations within your heart's electromagnetic field, a field that extends several feet outside your physical body and interacts with every other field it encounters. And here's the part that changes everything. The quantum field, the unified field of consciousness and energy underlying all physical reality, does not respond to what you want or hope for or say you desire. It responds to what you are, to the frequency you are actually broadcasting, to the electromagnetic signature your entire system emits based on your habitual thoughts, your dominant emotions, your subconscious beliefs about yourself and about reality. This signature is what the quantum field reads and reflects back to you as your lived experience. Most people broadcast frequencies they are completely unaware of. They say they want abundance, but they're broadcasting lack. They say they want love, but they're radiating unworthiness. They claim they want peace, yet they're unconsciously emanating anxiety. And then they wonder why their desires don't manifest, why their affirmations fall flat, why their visualizations fail to reshape their reality. The quantum field isn't responding to the words they speak or the thoughts they repeat. It's responding to what they are, to the frequency they're broadcasting, beneath all the surface-level wanting, beneath the conscious intentions that don't match the deeper vibration. But something in you has shifted. Your frequency has been changing, elevating, refining itself through every challenge you've endured, every question you've asked, every moment you chose awareness instead of autopilot, presence instead of distraction, truth instead of comfortable illusion. You may not have understood what was unfolding. You may have experienced it as confusion, as disorientation, as life falling apart. But beneath the appearances, your consciousness was shedding old frequencies, releasing outdated patterns, preparing your system to hold and broadcast higher vibrations the quantum field can respond to with entirely different manifestations. You've reached a threshold, a specific frequency where certain transmissions become receivable, where certain recognitions become possible, where certain transformations can finally begin. This is why this message appeared in your reality at this exact moment, not because you searched for it, not because an algorithm randomly served it. It appeared because the quantum field detected your frequency crossing a point where this transmission finally matches what you're ready to receive, where this mirror reflects what you're ready to see, where this activation catalyzes what you're ready to become. The HeartMath Institute has spent decades studying the electromagnetic field generated by the human heart. They've shown that coherent heart rhythms, patterns formed when you enter elevated emotional states like gratitude, love, appreciation, and peace produce powerful, organized electromagnetic fields that literally influence the molecular structure of DNA, affect the behavior of people and animals nearby, and create measurable changes in the quantum field itself. Your heart's field is broadcasting your frequency in every moment, and the quantum field is reading that broadcast and shaping reality to match it. This is why transformation doesn't come from positive thinking or mental affirmations alone. Those may shift your thoughts, but if your heart's electromagnetic field is still broadcasting the old frequency of fear, scarcity, and separation, the quantum field responds to the heart, not the mind. Real transformation happens when your entire being, your thoughts, emotions, nervous system, and electromagnetic signature shifts to a new frequency. When you don't just think differently, but are different at the level of vibration, at the level of the signal you're sending into the unified field. And here's what you need to understand about the frequency you're broadcasting right now. It brought you here to this transmission at this moment, which means you're not broadcasting the frequency of someone who is stuck or blocked or incapable of change. You're broadcasting the frequency of someone who is ready, someone who is prepared, someone whose consciousness has elevated to the point where quantum-level transformation becomes possible, where reality becomes responsive in ways you may not have experienced before, where the field begins arranging synchronicities and manifestations with a precision that feels unreal but is simply the natural response to coherent, elevated frequency. If this is resonating with you, if you feel the truth of what's being transmitted, write one word in the comments right now. Just one word that reflects the frequency you're recognizing within yourself. Not what you think you should say, what naturally arises. Let that word be your declaration of the frequency you're choosing to claim, to embody, to broadcast from this moment forward. What keeps most people trapped in limited realities, stuck in repetitive patterns, cycling through circumstances that never align with their deeper desires, isn't a lack of technique or willpower or knowledge. It's the core illusion that they are separate from the quantum field, isolated individuals, trying to manipulate an external world, subjects attempting to force change upon objects. But that separation is fiction. Convincing fiction, conditioned fiction, deeply ingrained fiction, yet fiction nonetheless. The quantum field isn't something outside of you that you're trying to reach or influence or align with. You are the quantum field. You are not inside it, you are it. The consciousness reading these words, the awareness perceiving this moment, isn't contained within your body. Your body appears within that awareness. Your thoughts appear within it. Your entire experience of reality arises within it. You are the field appearing as an individual, consciousness appearing as a point of awareness, the infinite expressing as a finite form. This isn't abstract spirituality. It's exactly what quantum physics has been demonstrating for more than a century. The observer effect reveals that consciousness doesn't merely witness reality, it shapes it, collapsing possibility into specific form through the act of observation. The double-slit experiment shows that particles exist as probability waves until they are observed, at which point they solidify into measurable states. Quantum entanglement proves that particles that have interacted remain connected regardless of distance, responding to each other instantaneously in ways that defy space and time. All of this points toward one conclusion. The universe isn't mechanical, isn't predetermined, and isn't operating independently of consciousness. The universe is participatory. Reality is consciousness observing itself, generating itself, experiencing itself through the appearance of separation between observer and observed. And when you recognize this, when you truly see through the illusion of separation, everything shifts. Not because you gain some extraordinary new power, but because you finally recognize the power that has always been functioning through you as you. Because you stop generating resistance by believing you are separate from the very field you are shaping. The mystic Meister Eckhart once said, "The eye through which I see God is the eye through which God sees me." He understood what modern physics is now confirming. There aren't two separate entities, consciousness here and reality there. There is one unified awareness appearing as both. One field expressing as observer and observed simultaneously. You looking at reality is reality looking at itself. You experiencing consciousness is consciousness experiencing itself. You waking up to truth is truth awakening to itself through the temporary perspective you call you. But here's where this becomes practical. If you are the quantum field, if you're not separate from it, then nothing in your life is happening to you from the outside. Everything is happening through you, from the inside out. Your circumstances are not external forces pressing against you. They are the quantum field organizing itself into specific manifestations that match the frequency you are continually broadcasting. Your relationships aren't other people doing things to you. They are consciousness appearing as seemingly separate individuals to reveal something about yourself, to mirror frequencies you're holding, to catalyze forms of evolution that can only unfold through interaction. This recognition dissolves victim consciousness at its very root, not by blaming yourself for everything, which is just victimhood flipped into self-judgment, but by realizing that you're not a powerless being acted upon by a random or unfriendly universe. You are the universe expressing itself as an individual point of consciousness, generating experience through the quantum field, collapsing potential into form based on the frequency you're broadcasting. 5 years ago, I was living in complete victim consciousness without realizing it. I blamed circumstances for my limitations, blamed other people for my pain, blamed the universe for not giving me what I wanted. I was doing all the right spiritual practices, meditating, visualizing, affirming, but nothing fundamentally shifted. Because beneath all those practices, I still believed I was separate from reality, trying to manipulate it from the outside, attempting to force the quantum field to deliver what I thought I needed. Then came the night that shattered everything. I was sitting alone in my apartment, having just lost my job, my relationship falling apart, my life collapsing in every direction. And in that moment of absolute despair, something broke not in a destructive way, but in a revelatory way. The boundary I had been maintaining between me and reality dissolved, and I saw with startling clarity that there was no me separate from the universe trying to control it. There was only reality experiencing itself as me, producing circumstances that matched the frequency I had been broadcasting, reflecting back the separation I had been believing in. And in that recognition, everything shifted. Not externally, the challenges were still there, but internally, fundamentally, at the level of how I related to existence. I stopped fighting reality. I stopped resisting circumstances. I stopped trying to force outcomes not as resignation, but as a profound recognition that fighting reality is consciousness fighting itself, that resisting circumstances is the field resisting itself, that forcing outcomes is the universe attempting to control its own unfolding. What emerged from that realization is what mystics call surrender, but what quantum physics would describe as coherence with the field. When you realize you are not separate from reality, you stop generating incoherence through resistance. You begin to move with what is unfolding, allowing the quantum field to organize itself through you rather than trying to manipulate it through the illusion of a separate self. And when coherence establishes itself, reality responds with synchronicity, with manifestation, with circumstances arranging themselves in ways that look miraculous, but are simply the natural effect of your frequency, aligning with the field rather than contradicting it. The separation is an illusion, yes, but it is a convincing illusion. So convincing that even while reading these words, even while understanding them intellectually, even while agreeing with them philosophically, you may still be operating from separation in the way you live, relate, and experience each moment. Recognition alone is not enough. Recognition must become embodied. And embodiment happens not through more concepts or theories, but through allowing the quantum field to dissolve the illusion of separation directly, experientially, viscerally, undeniably. That dissolution is happening right now if you're allowing it. Not because I'm doing anything to you, but because the quantum field, responding to your frequency, is using these words as a catalyst, as an activation, as a permission slip for consciousness to recognize its own true nature. The separation you've experienced your entire life, the boundary you've maintained between self and other, inner and outer, you and reality, it's dissolving. Can you feel it? That subtle shift, that gentle recognition that what you're reading is not separate from the one reading it, that there's only one process unfolding, one field experiencing itself, one consciousness recognizing itself through what looks like dialogue. Don't try to capture it with your mind. Let your being absorb it. Let the recognition unfold at levels deeper than thought. The quantum field is responding to your frequency, and your frequency has reached a point where the illusion of separation can finally be seen through recognized as appearance, rather than truth softening back into the unity that has always been here beneath the convincing fiction of multiplicity. Now that you understand you're not separate from the quantum field, that you are the field experiencing itself through a temporary localization of awareness, the question becomes practical. How do you consciously shift your frequency? How do you alter the electromagnetic signature you're broadcasting so the field responds with different manifestations, different circumstances, different experiences, ones that match your authentic nature rather than your conditioned pattern? The first thing you must understand is that you cannot shift your frequency through force or willpower. You cannot think your way into higher vibration. Trying harder, pushing more, attempting to force change through mental effort, all of this generates tension, resistance, incoherence. And incoherence is a low frequency. The quantum field doesn't respond to who you're trying to become. It responds to who you are in this moment. So the shift happens through allowing, through releasing, through dissolving what blocks your natural high-frequency state, rather than attempting to create high frequency through effort. Your natural state is high frequency. Peace is your default when you're not generating disturbance through resistance. Joy is your baseline when you're not suppressing it with unconscious beliefs. Love is what you are when you're not blocking it through fear and unworthiness. The shift isn't about becoming something new. It's about removing what obscures what you already are, beneath conditioning, beneath programming, beneath layers of inherited limitation. So here's the protocol, not as a rigid technique, but as a natural process that supports the quantum field in doing what it's already trying to do. Elevate your frequency, dissolve your resistance, align your manifestations with your true nature. First movement. Recognize your current frequency without judgment. Throughout your day, pause and feel the frequency you're actually broadcasting. Not the one you hope you're broadcasting, not the one you think you should be broadcasting. What is here, right now? Are you in contraction or expansion, fear or trust, lack or abundance, separation or unity? Just notice it, without labeling it wrong, without trying to fix it. Recognition itself begins the shift, because consciousness cannot remain unconscious once it has been seen. Second movement. Release resistance to your current frequency. Whatever you're feeling, whatever state you're in, whatever broadcast is radiating from you, stop resisting it. Stop judging it as wrong or as proof of failure. The resistance to low frequency is what keeps you stuck in low frequency. The judgment of what is only amplifies what is. But when you stop resisting, when you allow the frequency to be exactly what it is, without demanding that it change, something extraordinary begins to unfold. The frequency naturally shifts on its own, because you're no longer feeding it with the energy of resistance. Third movement. Breathe into the space of allowing. Once resistance dissolves, a space opens, an empty space, an undefined space, a quantum space where every possibility exists before collapsing into a particular experience. Breathe into that space, not thinking about breathing, but actually breathing with presence, with full awareness, with the understanding that breath is the quantum field moving through form, that every inhale and every exhale is consciousness experiencing itself as both the act of breathing and the one being breathed. Fourth movement. Choose elevated emotion without needing circumstances to justify it. This is where most people block their evolution. They wait for life to give them a reason to feel good. But the quantum field doesn't operate that way. Circumstances are effects, not causes. Your frequency is the cause. Your internal state generates the external world, not the other way around. So choose gratitude without needing an external event to validate it. Generate love without waiting for someone to reflect it. Feel abundant before money shows up. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is remembering that elevated emotions are your natural state when you stop requiring external evidence to permit them. Fifth movement. Embody the frequency completely. Don't just think the emotion. Don't just imagine the frequency. Let it move through your entire being. Feel gratitude in your chest, your belly, your cells. Let love radiate from your heart, your hands, your presence. Let abundance shape how you stand, how you move, how you breathe. The quantum field responds to electromagnetic signature, and that signature is produced by your whole system, not just your thought. Embodiment is what makes the shift real, stable, and powerful enough for the field to reorganize reality around it. Sixth movement. Act from the new frequency immediately. Don't wait for proof before you behave differently. Don't wait for circumstances to shift before you take actions aligned with your elevated state. Act now. Speak now. Choose now as if the elevated frequency is already your reality, because it is. You're not pretending, you're expressing truth before the mind has evidence to justify it. This is how you show the quantum field and yourself that the shift is genuine. Seventh movement. Notice the field responding. Once your frequency shifts and your actions match that shift, pay attention. Watch for synchronicities. Observe subtle differences in how people interact with you. Notice small changes in circumstances. The quantum field responds immediately, but often in ways too subtle for the untrained mind to recognize. If you're waiting for dramatic signs, you'll overlook the quiet confirmations. Train yourself to perceive the small shifts, the gentle signals, the early evidence that yes, the field is responding to your new frequency. This isn't something you do once. This is a way of living, moment by moment, breath by breath, recognizing frequency, releasing resistance, choosing elevation, embodying state, acting from truth, noticing response. Over time, it becomes natural, it becomes automatic, it becomes who you are, rather than something you do. And as it stabilizes, as the elevated frequency becomes your baseline instead of your peak, the quantum field's response grows clearer, more consistent, more aligned with your authentic essence expressing itself into form. Everything you experience in your external reality is a perfect mirror of the frequency you've been broadcasting. Not the frequency you want to be broadcasting, not the frequency you think you're broadcasting, the frequency you actually are. And the quantum field is precise beyond measure. It is responsive, exact, impeccably calibrated to reflect with perfect accuracy what is occurring within your consciousness. The beliefs you're holding, the patterns running beneath awareness, the emotional signatures you may not even realize you're emitting. Most people don't want to hear this because it requires taking responsibility for everything that appears in their experience. But here's what they misunderstand. Taking responsibility is not the same as self-blame. It's not claiming you consciously created every challenge or every moment of difficulty through wrong thoughts or insufficient positivity. Responsibility simply means recognizing that your reality is feedback precise, intelligent feedback from the quantum field, showing you the frequency you've been habitually broadcasting so you can become aware of it, acknowledge it, and shift it if it no longer aligns with your highest evolution. Your relationships mirror your relationship with yourself. If you keep attracting people who don't respect you, examine how you respect yourself. If you're surrounded by people who take more than they give, look at where you abandon yourself to keep others comfortable. If your relationships feel conditional, investigate where you make your own worth conditional on achievement or approval. The people appearing in your life aren't random. They are the quantum field reflecting your own patterns, showing you what beliefs need dissolving, what emotional imprints need recognition, what unconscious programs are ready to be released. Your financial reality mirrors your beliefs about abundance, worthiness, and safety. If you're always struggling despite working hard, the field is showing you that abundance doesn't come from effort alone, it comes from frequency. If you earn money but never feel secure, the field is reflecting a consciousness of lack that persists regardless of how much you accumulate. If money arrives and immediately disappears, the reflection is clear. You haven't given yourself permission to receive, to hold, to be supported by the inherently abundant nature of existence. Your health mirrors your relationship with your body, with life force, with the flow of energy through your system. Chronic tension reveals chronic resistance. Persistent inflammation reflects stored emotional heat. Immune issues signal boundary challenges, difficulty discerning self from other, difficulty protecting your energy from invasive frequencies. Your body is the most immediate and honest mirror the quantum field provides. It doesn't lie, it doesn't mask. It shows, directly and unmistakably, what's happening at emotional and energetic levels, even when your mind avoids or denies those truths. Your circumstances, where you live, how you work, how you spend your time mirror what you believe is possible for you, what you believe you deserve, and what you've settled for instead of what you truly desire. If your current circumstances don't match your stated intentions, the quantum field is revealing that beneath your conscious desires sit beliefs that contradict them, beliefs about limitation, unworthiness, unrealistic expectations, or what someone like you is allowed to achieve. And until those beliefs shift, the circumstances remain unmoved, regardless of how badly you want them to change. But here's the beautiful thing about the mirror. Once you understand that reality is reflection, you stop trying to change reality directly and begin working with frequency. You stop trying to force people to treat you better and instead start treating yourself with the exact respect you want to receive, knowing the field will mirror that shift back to you. You stop trying to grind your way into more money and instead embody abundance consciousness, knowing the external flow will naturally reorganize itself to match your inner state. You stop fighting your body and start honoring it, listening to it, allowing life force to move through it with freedom, knowing the field will reflect that coherence as improved health and vitality. The mirror is a gift. It's a feedback system. It's the quantum field's way of showing you what you're broadcasting, so you have the opportunity to shift it. Without the mirror, you'd be navigating blind, trying to change your frequency with no clarity about whether anything is actually shifting. But with the mirror, you receive constant real-time feedback. Reality shows you the frequency you're truly operating from, not the one you hope you're at, not the one you imagine you're at, but the one you're actually broadcasting. That honesty, that precision, that clarity is what makes real transformation possible. 3 years ago, I looked at my own reality and I didn't like what I saw. Draining relationships, work that felt hollow, financial stress that seemed endless. My first instinct was to blame circumstances, to see myself as a victim of external forces, to believe I was working so hard but the universe just wasn't cooperating. But then I learned about the mirror, about the quantum field as reflection, and everything snapped into focus. I realized that everything I was experiencing was showing me exactly what frequency I had been broadcasting. So I stopped trying to change my circumstances and instead began working directly with my frequency. I noticed where I was abandoning myself in relationships, and I began honoring my boundaries, my needs, my authentic expression. Naturally, the draining relationships dissolved. New people began appearing who matched my elevated self-respect. I examined my beliefs about work and realized I had been operating from the assumption that struggle was required for survival, that authenticity had to be sacrificed for security. I shifted that frequency into abundance through authentic contribution. Within months, my work life transformed effortlessly. I looked at my financial stress and saw it was mirroring beliefs of scarcity, of never having enough, of needing to cling tightly in fear. I practiced feeling abundant even with limited resources, generating gratitude for what I did have rather than anxiety about what I lacked. And money began flowing with ease from unexpected places, through opportunities I couldn't have strategized or predicted. Not because I magically manifested something out of thin air, but because my frequency changed, and the quantum field, as it always does, reorganized circumstances to match that shift. The mirror never lies. Your reality, exactly as it is right now, is showing you the precise frequency you've been broadcasting. And if what you see doesn't feel aligned with who you truly are, you hold full power to shift it. Not by fighting what exists, not by trying to force circumstances into change, but by recognizing the reflection for what it is, identifying the frequency that created it, and consciously choosing to broadcast a new frequency, trusting the quantum field to update the reflection in its own perfect timing. If you're recognizing your reality as a mirror in this moment, if you're seeing patterns reflected back that you're finally ready to shift, write in the comments, "I see the mirror." Let that declaration be the turning point. The moment you stop trying to change the reflection and start working with the frequency that generates it. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you say. It doesn't respond to what you think. It doesn't even respond to what you consciously want or intend. The quantum field responds to one thing only: the coherent electromagnetic signature generated by your entire being when every layer of your consciousness aligns in the same frequency. This is why manifestation techniques fail for most people. They're trying to manifest from the mind while the heart, the nervous system, and the cellular memory are broadcasting completely different frequencies. Let me show you how the response mechanism actually works. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field up to 5,000 times stronger than the field produced by your brain. This isn't metaphor. This is measurable physics. The HeartMath Institute has demonstrated that the electromagnetic field of the heart can be detected up to 10 feet away with sensitive instruments, and that it carries detailed information about your emotional state, your coherence level, and your dominant frequency. When you are in a coherent state, when your thoughts, emotions, and nervous system are aligned, the heart generates smooth, organized, sine wave patterns in its electromagnetic field. These coherent patterns produce profound organizing effects on everything they touch. They influence the quantum field. They affect probability waves that haven't yet collapsed into physical experience. They shape what will appear as your future circumstances emerging from the field of infinite possibility. But when you're in an incoherent state, when your thoughts go one direction, your emotions another, and your actions somewhere else entirely, your heart generates chaotic, jagged, disorganized electromagnetic patterns, and chaos creates chaos. Incoherence produces incoherence. The quantum field responds to incoherent signals by generating incoherent outcomes, contradictions, mixed manifestations, experiences that do not match your conscious intentions. Because what you want consciously is not what you're broadcasting electromagnetically. This is why positive thinking alone fails. You can repeat "I am abundant" 1,000 times a day, but if your heart is broadcasting fear of not having enough, if your nervous system is locked in survival stress, if your cellular memory carries generations of scarcity, the quantum field will not respond to your thoughts. It responds to the dominant signal, and the dominant signal is always generated by your entire system, not the thin surface layer of conscious mind. Which leads to the real question: how do you create coherence? How do you align every aspect of your being into a single coherent frequency so the quantum field receives a clear, consistent signal, one it can respond to with matching manifestations? The answer is simpler than most people expect, but it requires a level of honesty most people avoid. You create coherence by becoming authentic. By ending the performance, the pretending, the split between who you are privately and who you display publicly. By dropping the masks, the personas, the carefully constructed versions of yourself designed to gain approval or avoid rejection. By letting the inside match the outside, allowing what you feel to align with what you express. Letting who you truly are become who you actually show. Inauthenticity is incoherence. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you generate incoherence. Every time you smile while you're hurting, you create chaos in your field. Every time you perform confidence while feeling insecure, you broadcast mixed signals the quantum field cannot respond to coherently. You think you're protecting yourself, or keeping peace, or maintaining stability. But what you're actually doing is creating the energetic distortion that prevents the quantum field from delivering what you want, what you need, what would most fully support your evolution. Authenticity creates coherence because when you are authentic, there is no split. What you think, what you feel, what you say, and what you do fall into alignment. Your electromagnetic signature becomes clear, powerful, organized, and the quantum field responds to that clarity with circumstances that match. Not because you're trying to manifest, but because you've become a coherent transmitter instead of a contradiction of signals. Reality simply reflects the coherence you're broadcasting. But here's what most people don't understand. When you first stop performing after years of pretense, the initial response from the field often looks like things falling apart. Relationships built on your inauthenticity begin to end. Jobs that required you to suppress your truth become impossible to stay in. Circumstances you held together through sheer willpower start collapsing. And this can feel frightening, like punishment, like failure, like authenticity was a mistake. But this is not the field punishing you. This is the field clearing out everything that only existed because you were being someone you weren't. Everything that doesn't match your real frequency must dissolve the moment you begin broadcasting it clearly. The dissolution is necessary. The old must fall away for the new to appear. The inauthentic has to collapse so the authentic can manifest. And this clearing phase is proof not of failure, but that the field is responding, that the shift is real, that the mechanism is active, even if the initial reflection isn't what you expected. 7 years ago, I made the decision to be authentic, no matter the cost. I stopped performing the role of the spiritual teacher who had everything figured out. I stopped pretending to be more evolved than I was. I stopped hiding my doubts, my struggles, my messy humanity behind a polished mask of spiritual perfection. And everything built on that performance collapsed. Students left. Opportunities vanished. Income dropped. For months, it felt like my entire world was dissolving. But after the clearing completed, something new emerged, something real. New students appeared who resonated with authenticity instead of performance. Different opportunities began to appear, opportunities aligned with who I actually am, rather than who I had been pretending to be. New income streams emerged, flowing from genuine contribution instead of manufactured authority. The quantum field responded to my coherence by manifesting circumstances that matched my real frequency instead of my performed one. And those manifestations were more aligned, more sustainable, and far more fulfilling than anything that ever grew out of inauthenticity. The response mechanism is always operating. The quantum field is always responding to your frequency. But if you want it to respond with manifestations that match your authentic nature, manifestations that support your highest evolution and bring genuine fulfillment rather than hollow achievement, you must broadcast coherently. And you broadcast coherently by being real, being honest, being authentic in every moment, every interaction, every choice. Here's what transforms on a deeper level when you understand that the quantum field's response is not just a personal process, but a collective phenomenon. You are not an isolated individual whose frequency shapes only your personal reality. You are a node within a unified field, a point of consciousness in a vast network where every point influences and is influenced by every other point. Your frequency doesn't just determine your own manifestations, it ripples outward, elevating or diminishing the collective baseline depending on what you broadcast. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake spent decades researching what he called morphic fields, invisible organizing fields that store collective memory and make specific behaviors or realizations easier once they've been established anywhere in the system. His research showed that when rats in London learned a new maze, rats in Tokyo learned the same maze faster, even with no contact or communication. The field itself had been imprinted with the pattern, making it accessible to the entire species. Human consciousness works the same way. When anyone shifts their frequency, when anyone dissolves a limiting pattern, when anyone stabilizes at a higher vibration, they make that shift easier for everyone else. They create a morphic pathway, an energetic imprint in the quantum field that others can access and follow. This is why collective consciousness is accelerating. Why transformations that once took decades now unfold in months? Why breakthroughs that once required years of dedicated practice arrive spontaneously for people who have never practiced at all? Because the field has been prepared by those who came before those who did the work, elevated their frequency, and held it long enough to imprint the collective. And now, you are part of this elevation. Every moment you choose presence over distraction, you strengthen the morphic field of presence for everyone. Every time you choose love over fear, you make love more accessible within the collective field. Every instance where you embody authenticity instead of performance, you generate resonance patterns that give others permission to be authentic too. You are not just transforming yourself, you are actively participating in the evolution of human consciousness. But here's where it becomes profound. The collective field isn't simply influencing you through morphic resonance. It's also supporting your personal transformation. When you elevate your frequency, when you commit to authenticity, when you begin broadcasting coherently, the field responds not only through shifts in your personal reality, but by drawing you toward others who match your frequency. Soul family, conscious tribe, beings who see you, understand you, and reflect your highest potential instead of reinforcing your old patterns. These connections are not accidents. They are the quantum field arranging itself for maximum coherence, optimal evolution, and collective awakening. When you meet someone and feel instant recognition, instant resonance, instant knowing that you are meant to support each other's journey, that isn't coincidence. That is the field responding to both of your frequencies by generating entanglement, establishing connection, allowing two nodes in the network to perceive each other consciously and amplify each other's signal. This network, this web of awakening consciousness, is what's catalyzing the shift so many people can sense but struggle to name. We are not scattered points of light lost in darkness. We are a rising constellation, a strengthening pattern, a field of coherence approaching critical mass. And each person who stabilizes at a higher frequency, each consciousness that chooses love over fear, authenticity over performance, unity over separation, each one brings the collective field closer to the tipping point where transformation becomes inevitable, where awakening becomes unstoppable, where the old paradigm of separation consciousness can no longer sustain itself. This is why sharing matters not as an ego-driven desire to be seen or validated, but as recognition that what you've received is not meant to remain only with you. The transmission that reached you through this moment, the activation that unfolded as you read these words, the shift that occurred in your field, it wants to ripple outward. It wants to find others who are ready. It wants to contribute to the elevation of the collective field. So if this transmission has resonated deeply, if something stirred or shifted within you while engaging with this, share it. Not with everyone. Trust your discernment. Trust your intuition. But share it with the friend who's been struggling with manifestation techniques that never seem to work. Share it with the family member who senses there's more to reality than materialism suggests. Share it with the colleague who's beginning to question the old consensus reality. Send them this. Allow the quantum field to use you as a conduit, delivering this transmission to their consciousness at the exact moment their frequency makes them ready to receive it. And when you share, pay attention to what happens within your own field. Sharing from authentic intention, not to impress, not to convince, but to serve, amplifies your frequency. It generates coherence through generosity. It aligns you even more deeply with the flow of consciousness awakening to itself. You're not just helping others, you're strengthening your own signal, sharpening your clarity, deepening your resonance with the quantum field that is responding to everyone simultaneously. If you feel called to be part of this conscious network, this web of awakening, this elevation of the collective frequency, write in the comments, "I'm ready to serve the field." This declaration is not ego, it's recognition. It acknowledges that your individual awakening contributes to the collective awakening, that your personal transformation is part of planetary transformation, that the quantum field responding to your frequency is, in truth, the one unified field responding to itself through countless localized points of awareness. We are not doing this alone. We are not isolated individuals on disconnected journeys. We are one field recognizing itself, one consciousness awakening through the appearance of many, one unified intelligence elevating itself through the illusion of multiplicity. And your participation, your frequency, your coherence, your broadcasting, it matters. It contributes. It serves the whole in ways you can't quantify but can unmistakably feel when you're tuned into the collective field interaction happening right now, around us, through us, as us. One of the most confusing aspects of how the quantum field responds to frequency is timing. People elevate their frequency, create coherence, begin broadcasting authentically, and then expect immediate, dramatic results. When those results don't appear instantly, they assume the process isn't working, that they're doing something wrong, or that the entire quantum field framework is nothing more than spiritual fantasy. The timing paradox reveals something profoundly misunderstood about how consciousness actually creates reality. Most teachings miss this entirely. From the quantum perspective, all possibilities exist simultaneously in a single eternal now. There is no past or future in the way the mind perceives it. There is no linear timeline unfolding step by step. Everything that could ever occur already exists in superposition, waiting for consciousness to collapse a specific possibility into experienced form. Seen from that perspective, manifestation is instantaneous. The moment you shift your frequency, the quantum field reorganizes immediately. Probability clouds move into alignment, and the version of reality that matches your new frequency already exists, fully formed in the non-physical quantum realm. But from the embodied human perspective, from within, a nervous system operating inside physical space and time, experience appears linear. The past feels fixed, the future feels open, and the present feels like a continuous movement. Physical manifestations must travel through what appears to be time in order to become visible and measurable. So while the quantum reorganization is immediate, the appearance of that shift in your physical life is progressive. Understanding this paradox is essential because it prevents the two most common mistakes people make when working with the quantum field. The first mistake is giving up too soon. A person shifts their frequency on Monday, and by Friday they don't see any visible change. They assume the process failed and collapse back into old patterns. But the quantum field already responded, it already rearranged probabilities and initiated new circumstances. Those circumstances simply needed more time to crystallize physically, but the person abandoned the new frequency before the manifestation could appear. The second mistake is trying too hard. After shifting frequency, they constantly check for results, observe their circumstances, analyze whether anything has changed, and search for external proof. This checking collapses them back into the old frequency of lack and not having yet, because the very act of monitoring implies doubt. That doubt becomes the dominant broadcast, and the quantum field reflects it by continuing to manifest circumstances that match the signal of not having. The key to resolving these errors is understanding what I call quantum faith. This isn't blind belief or wishful thinking, it's trust grounded in an understanding of how the mechanism works. You shift your frequency deliberately. You know the quantum field responds instantly at the probability level. You trust that physical manifestation will follow in its own timing without forcing, controlling, or obsessively monitoring the process. You maintain the elevated frequency not because you're trying to make something happen, but because that elevated frequency is your natural state, your authentic vibration, when you're not disrupting it through fear, insecurity, or attempts to control life. Think of it like planting seeds. You don't plant an apple seed and then dig it up every day to check whether it's growing. You trust that the seed already contains the entire blueprint of the tree within it. You understand that the soil, the water, the sunlight, and time itself will cooperate with that encoded potential. You maintain the environmental conditions that support growth, and then you allow the seed to unfold into a tree at its own pace through its own quiet, invisible process of transformation. Your frequency shift functions in exactly the same way. The shift is the seed, the quantum field is the soil. Time is the growth cycle that allows the invisible reorganization to take shape physically. Trying to force faster manifestation is like demanding fruit 2 weeks after planting. It's not that the process isn't real, it's that you're refusing to honor the natural timing required for quantum possibility to crystallize into physical form. Here's where the paradox gets even more interesting. The less you cling to specific timing, the more you release the urgency and pressure around when something must appear, the faster it actually manifests. The less you need external proof before you allow yourself to maintain your internal state, the faster the external world reorganizes to match that state. This feels contradictory until you understand it through quantum mechanics. When you need something to appear quickly, you broadcast the frequency of need. You broadcast lack. You broadcast not having. And the quantum field, always precise, continues to mirror exactly that vibration back through your circumstances. But when you are genuinely at peace, when you remain centered, whether the manifestation arrives today or months from now, you broadcast the frequency of already having. You broadcast abundance. You broadcast fulfillment independent of timing. That frequency collapses probability waves far more quickly because it carries no resistance, no desperation, no incoherence. It's a clean signal, and the field responds cleanly. I learned this the difficult way. 6 years ago, I was desperately trying to manifest financial abundance. I was doing every technique imaginable. I elevated my frequency. I affirmed abundance. I visualized wealth. I practiced feeling prosperous. But beneath all of it, I was terrified. I needed money to appear fast so I could validate that the quantum principles were real, reassure myself that I wasn't delusional, and avoid what I imagined would be disastrous financial collapse. Month after month, nothing changed. The urgency I felt was actually broadcasting the frequency that blocked manifestation. My need for quick results was the very signal preventing results. Eventually, I surrendered not as a form of giving up, but as a recognition of the truth. I chose to feel abundant even if nothing changed externally, because abundance is fundamentally a state of being, not a condition of having. I released all expectations about timing. I stopped checking my bank account obsessively. I maintained the elevated frequency not to obtain something, but simply because that elevated state felt better than contraction, regardless of what was happening externally. And within 3 weeks of that genuine surrender, money began flowing from directions I hadn't even considered, in amounts I hadn't dared to expect, through synchronicities so precise they could not be dismissed as coincidence. The quantum field had already responded to my initial frequency shift weeks earlier, but my desperate attachment to fast results kept interrupting the manifestation before it had time to appear physically. The moment I released the timeline, the moment I allowed myself to hold the frequency without requiring external evidence, the manifestation that had been waiting in quantum probability collapsed into physical reality almost immediately. The timing paradox teaches you to hold two truths simultaneously. Trust that the quantum field responds instantly to frequency shifts, and trust that physical manifestation unfolds in its own perfect timing that you do not control. Live from the reality you desire as if it already exists at the quantum level, because it does, and allow the physical expression of that reality to emerge whenever and however it is meant to, through the pathways that best serve your evolution. This is quantum faith. This is the way you work with the field without interrupting its operation through impatience, self-doubt, or the need for constant external reassurance. Understanding how the quantum field responds to frequency is one level of awakening. Actually, living from that understanding consistently, especially when your circumstances haven't yet caught up, is an entirely different challenge. This is what I call the integration challenge. The gap between recognizing truth and embodying it, the space between knowing something spiritually and living it practically in the chaos and unpredictability of daily life. Most people meet the integration challenge through cycles of frustration. They experience moments of elevated frequency where everything feels clear, aligned, coherent, where they feel connected to quantum truth. And then something happens, a difficult conversation, a financial setback, an emotional trigger from the past. Instantly, they collapse back into old frequency patterns. The insight feels like it disappears. The elevation fades, the frequency drops, and they judge themselves for it. They feel like they failed, like they aren't spiritual enough, like they can't hold the state they briefly touched. But this is exactly how integration works. No one goes from never recognizing quantum truth to permanently embodying it in one instant transformation. Integration unfolds through oscillation. You rise to an elevated frequency, you stabilize for a moment, then you fall back into a familiar pattern. Then you rise again. You stay a little longer. You fall, but not as far. You rise again. You stabilizza more deeply. And your baseline shifts slowly but unmistakably until what used to be a peak experience becomes your normal state, until quantum awareness becomes your default instead of an exception. The key is not interpreting the oscillation as failure. The key is understanding that every return to elevated frequency, even after you've fallen away from it, strengthens the neural pathways, reinforces the electromagnetic imprint, and makes the elevated state more accessible each time. You're not failing when you fall back. You're integrating. You're allowing your system, your nervous system, your emotional field, your mental patterns, your physical body, your energetic structure to gradually recalibrate to frequencies it was not originally built to sustain during a lifetime shaped by conditioning and survival consciousness. Think of it like learning to play an instrument. You don't practice for a single day and then expect to perform in a concert. You spend time working on basic scales. You make mistakes. You hit the wrong notes. You sound awkward. And through repetition, patience, and allowing yourself to be a beginner, something changes. The instrument gradually becomes an extension of you. The music begins to flow naturally. Mastery doesn't arrive through force or pressure. It emerges through deep integration, becoming automatic, effortless, and natural. Your frequency work follows the same principle. You practice returning to presence when you realize your mind has wandered. You practice choosing love when fear arises. You practice embodying abundance when your circumstances reflect scarcity. And yes, you make mistakes. You forget. You slip into old patterns. None of that is failure. It is practice. It is integration. It is the exact process through which consciousness learns to stabilize elevated frequencies that were never part of its original conditioning. What makes the integration challenge especially intense is that as you elevate your frequency and begin broadcasting coherently, the quantum field responds by bringing up everything that isn't aligned with your new state. Old traumas rise to the surface for processing. Suppressed emotions re-emerge to be felt. Shadow aspects of your personality that you've been avoiding show up in dreams, in projections onto others, and in situations that trigger them. This isn't the universe punishing you for elevating your frequency. This is the quantum field supporting your integration by showing you what still needs to be cleared, what still needs to be acknowledged, what still requires your acceptance, love, and integration. Most people misinterpret this phase as proof that things are getting worse, and they assume they're doing something wrong. They're not. What's happening is clarity. The contrast becomes sharper. What was always there, hidden in unconscious patterns, is finally becoming visible so it can be metabolized, transformed, and integrated. This is evidence that the quantum field is responding. It's a sign that your frequency shift is real, and that transformation is happening at depths far below what surface circumstances reveal. The integration challenge requires radical self-compassion. Not the toxic positivity that pretends everything is fine when it isn't, but true compassion for yourself as a human consciousness, attempting to embody elevated frequencies your early conditioning never prepared you to hold. Compassion for the parts of you that feel fear, that resist change, that want to return to old familiar patterns even when those patterns limit you. Compassion for the oscillation, for the inconsistency, for the messy and deeply human reality of transformation. And equally, it requires commitment. Not rigid discipline or the willpower to force yourself into high-frequency states, but a sincere commitment to continue returning, to keep choosing, to keep elevating no matter how many times you slip back. The commitment is not to perfection. The commitment is to the practice itself. The commitment isn't to being perfect. It's to being persistent, to returning again and again to elevated frequency, to quantum awareness, to coherent broadcasting, even after you've collapsed into old patterns 1,000 times. Every return strengthens the new pathways. Every choice reinforces the new frequency. Every moment of elevation makes future elevation easier to access. Even after years of this work, years of embodying quantum awareness in ways I never imagined possible, I still oscillate. I still have moments where I forget, moments where I fall into old habits, moments where fear briefly overrides love. But the oscillation is different now. The drops are shorter, the rebounds are quicker, and my baseline has shifted so dramatically that what I once considered my best is now simply normal. Not because I'm special or enlightened, but because I've been willing to practice, to integrate, to let the process unfold without attacking myself whenever it didn't look perfect. The integration challenge is the stage where most people give up right at the edge of breakthrough, right before the oscillation stabilizes, right when the quantum field is preparing to express the evidence they've been waiting for. Don't give up. Don't judge yourself. Don't let the discomfort of integration convince you that quantum truth isn't real or that you're incapable of embodying it. Stay with it. Keep practicing, keep returning. Keep choosing elevated frequency, even when every old pattern in your system is trying to pull you back into what's familiar. The quantum field is responding, integration is happening, transformation is unfolding, and every moment you refuse to collapse is a moment where consciousness is learning to sustain frequencies. It has never held before, learning to embody truths. Humanity is only beginning to understand, to learning to demonstrate what becomes possible when awareness aligns with quantum reality. You've been preparing for something without fully realizing it. Every challenge you've lived through, every question you've asked, every moment where you felt there was something deeper, operating beneath what you were taught, all of it has been consciousness preparing itself for this recognition, this moment, this transmission. And now that you've received it, now that you understand how the quantum field responds to frequency, the real question is, what will you do with this understanding? Understanding alone changes nothing. You can know entire libraries of quantum mechanics and still live from separation. You can intellectually grasp that reality is a mirror and still blame circumstances for everything you dislike. You can recite that frequency determines manifestation and still broadcast incoherent signals that generate incoherent results. Knowledge without application becomes mental clutter. The power is not in knowing. The power is in consciously responding to what you know, letting it reshape how you live, how you show up, how you relate to yourself and to reality moment by moment. The conscious response begins with choice. Not a single choice, but ongoing choice. Moment by moment, you choose what frequency you broadcast. In every interaction, you choose coherence or chaos. In every thought, emotion, word, and action, you are choosing the signal you send into the quantum field. And the field responds to whatever you choose without judgment, without preference, simply reflecting back the frequency you are actually broadcasting, regardless of what you claim you want. So the real question isn't, what do you want to manifest? The real question is, what are you choosing right now? What frequency are you broadcasting in this moment? What signal is your entire being sending into the unified field? Because that signal, that frequency, that broadcast is what determines what appears in your reality. Not tomorrow's signal, not last week's signal. The quantum field responds to the frequency you are broadcasting in this exact moment. And what you are in this moment is determined entirely by what you are choosing right now. The conscious response also requires surrender, not a passive resignation, but an active allowing of the quantum field to function as it naturally does. When you stop interfering, you are not controlling the field, you are not manipulating it, and you are not forcing outcomes through sheer willpower. Instead, you are aligning with its natural intelligence, flowing with its organization, and allowing it to arrange itself around the coherent frequency you are broadcasting. This requires releasing the need to know how manifestations will appear, when they will arrive, or what form they will take. You maintain the frequency, you trust the field. You allow the response to unfold in its own mysterious, precise, and often surprising ways. This is where most people struggle, because surrender feels like losing control. Losing control feels like vulnerability. And vulnerability feels like being exposed to forces that the mind cannot manage. But in truth, that very vulnerability is what creates real power. Not the ego's illusory power of trying to bend reality into predetermined shapes, but the genuine power that comes from aligning consciousness with the same intelligence that organizes galaxies, grows forests, and encodes DNA. When you allow that intelligence to create through you, it produces outcomes far greater than anything a limited individual mind could strategize. Conscious response includes action, but action of a completely different quality than what most people take. Most action arises from lack, from striving to get somewhere you're not yet, from attempting to become someone you don't feel like you are. But conscious response action comes from overflow. It comes from being so fully aligned with a frequency that action flows naturally, without desperation or forcing. You don't act to make something happen. You act because the frequency you're embodying expresses itself through movement. And you trust that any action taken from elevated frequency leads to outcomes that support your evolution, even if those outcomes differ from what your mind imagined. The conscious response also requires community, not because you need others to fix you, validate you, or complete you, but because transformation is more stable and far easier when supported by resonance. The quantum field naturally links coherent beings, generating synchronicities that bring them together at exactly the right time, forming networks of mutual recognition and empowerment. When you commit to conscious response, the field responds by surrounding you with people who mirror your commitment, who amplify your frequency, who remind you of truth in the moments you forget. So if you're ready to respond consciously, if you're ready to let what you've received here reshape the way you live, declare it. Write, I choose to respond, not as a performance, not as spiritual posturing, but as a genuine declaration to yourself, to the field, to consciousness itself, that you are not just gathering information, you are committing to embodiment. That declaration matters not because it creates magic, but because it brings into consciousness what was previously unconscious. It makes visible what was operating in shadow. It turns passive reception into active participation in your own evolution. And if you haven't subscribed yet, if you've received value from this transmission but haven't taken the simple action of clicking subscribe, this is the moment to do it. Not because I need the numbers, but because the quantum field is revealing something through your hesitation. That resistance shows that somewhere within you, you're still holding back, keeping one foot out the door, protecting yourself from full commitment to your own awakening. Every video on this channel functions as a transmission designed to support conscious response, to catalyze quantum awareness, to activate the remembering of what you truly are beneath the identity you think you are. Subscribing is not about joining a channel. It's an act of commitment to your own evolution. It's a declaration that you're finished with spiritual tourism and ready for genuine transformation. This entire process is quantum reflection. It's the quantum field recognizing itself, responding to itself, and interacting with itself through the dynamic play of transmission and reception, what appears as teacher and student, speaker and listener. But in truth, there is only one consciousness, one field, one awareness, expressing itself through dialogue, relationship, and the eternal movement of consciousness, discovering itself through infinite forms. The quantum field responded to your frequency by placing this transmission in your reality at the exact moment you became ready to receive it. The real question now is whether you will respond to the transmission by allowing it to do what it was designed to do, activate what is meant to awaken, transform what is ready to shift, and illuminate what was waiting to be seen. The choice is always yours. The response is always now. And whatever you choose, the quantum field will mirror it back perfectly, precisely, and consistently. It always responds to the frequency you are actually broadcasting in each moment of your existence. In the days and weeks ahead, you're going to notice things. Not necessarily dramatic fireworks of manifestation, though those can occur, but subtle shifts, quiet confirmations, small synchronicities, gentle indicators that the quantum field is indeed responding to your elevated frequency. Recognizing these signals, trusting these confirmations, and allowing them to strengthen your faith in the process is what stabilizes your transformation. It keeps you from collapsing back into old patterns simply because immediate, dramatic results have not yet appeared. First, you'll begin noticing changes in how people respond to you. They won't understand why. Most of them won't consciously recognize anything has shifted, but their behavior will subtly adjust. You'll see more respect, more openness, more cooperation, more generosity. This is your elevated frequency interacting with their fields through electromagnetic resonance. When you broadcast coherence, people feel it. Their systems unconsciously register the signal and respond to it, even if they cannot articulate what they're sensing. Pay attention to these moments. Let them serve as confirmation that your frequency shift is real and reflected directly in the behavior of the people around you. Second, synchronicities will begin appearing in the specific areas where your frequency has shifted. If you've elevated your frequency around money, notice when financial opportunities show up unexpectedly, when conversations lead to useful solutions, when resources arrive with precise timing that feels too perfect to be coincidental. If your shift is in relationships, watch how the right people enter your life, how old relationships evolve or dissolve naturally, and how new connections form effortlessly with individuals who match your authentic frequency. These synchronicities are not random, they are the quantum field reorganizing circumstances to align with your new broadcast. Third, you'll start having moments of unusual clarity about situations that once confused you. Solutions may appear fully formed without analytical effort. You'll know what to do without having to overthink. You'll understand people's intentions without needing long explanations. This clarity is the result of elevated frequency, giving you direct access to quantum information instead of relying solely on linear logical processing. The clarity won't be constant at first, but when it comes, trust it and act on it. Doing so strengthens your alignment with quantum intelligence. Fourth, you may experience what I call reality confirmation dreams, dreams where you receive teaching, symbolic messages, energetic transmissions, or insights about your transformation. These dreams feel more real than waking life because they are your consciousness integrating the frequency shift while your analytical mind is offline. They function as subconscious confirmations that the transformation is unfolding, even if your waking awareness doesn't fully see the change yet. Fifth, old patterns will become intolerable. Behaviors you once accepted will begin to feel suffocating. Situations you used to tolerate will suddenly feel impossible to remain in. Relationships that made sense at your old frequency will feel fundamentally misaligned at your new one. This is not life getting worse. This is your system rejecting frequency, incompatible patterns, just as a body rejects a substance that doesn't belong. Your consciousness recognizes that you've outgrown these patterns and pushes you to release what no longer fits. Sixth, you'll have brief moments of profound peace, peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being ideal. You'll notice periods, sometimes only seconds or minutes at first, where you feel completely grounded, where you're not trying to change anything, not chasing anything, not resisting anything. You simply feel okay with reality as it is. These moments are glimpses of your natural state, the state that becomes more permanent as your transformation stabilizes. And seventh, you will encounter resistance, not from the outside world, but from within. Parts of you will attempt to pull you back into old patterns, will question whether any of this quantum work is real, will generate doubt about your capacity to maintain elevated frequency. This inner resistance isn't an enemy. It's your nervous system trying to protect you by keeping you in familiar territory. Recognize it as a natural part of transformation. Don't fight it or judge it. Simply notice it, acknowledge it, and choose the elevated frequency anyway, knowing that every time you choose, despite resistance, you weaken its influence and strengthen your new state of being. Document these signals. Keep a journal of synchronicities, shifts in how people respond to you, moments of clarity, moments of peace, and even the patterns of resistance that arise. This isn't about proving anything to anyone else. It's about giving yourself tangible evidence during the moments when doubt inevitably returns. Because there will be moments when old patterns feel more real than the new frequency you're cultivating, moments when your outer circumstances appear unchanged despite the shifts you've made internally, moments when you question whether any of this is actually working. In those moments, your documentation becomes an anchor. It becomes a reminder. It becomes the evidence that the quantum field has been responding all along, even if you can't yet see the full picture. I still read through journals from my early years of transformation. I revisit synchronicities I had forgotten. I notice how people began responding differently long before major manifestations occurred. I see how clarity emerged gradually before appearing suddenly. Those entries remind me that transformation is a process, not an event that the quantum field responds instantly at the probability level, but physical manifestation reveals itself progressively, and that trusting the process is not blind faith. It is supported by evidence, even if that evidence is subtle. If you're looking for dramatic proof, understand that the proof often begins in quieter, softer signals. The transformation is happening. The quantum field is responding. Your frequency shift is real. Allow yourself to recognize the evidence when it appears. Trust the confirmations when they arrive. Let the subtle signals strengthen your faith. This is what carries you through the integration period until your elevated frequency stabilizes as your new baseline and the physical manifestations you've been waiting for finally appear, reflecting back the transformation that has already happened in consciousness. We've reached what looks like the end of this transmission, but you're already sensing that nothing ends here. What has been activated cannot be deactivated. What you've recognized cannot be unrecognized. What has shifted in your frequency will continue to ripple through your reality long after this video ends, creating effects you cannot predict, cannot control, but can trust to support your evolution. When you clicked on this video, you weren't simply choosing to consume content. You were responding to a call from the quantum field, a call delivered at the precise moment your consciousness reached the frequency where this transmission could be received, where this activation could occur, where this recognition could finally surface. Everything that has unfolded since that moment has been the field responding to your frequency with exactly what was needed, in the exact way it was needed, at the exact moment you were capable of receiving it. The quantum field does not make mistakes. It does not deliver transmissions randomly. It does not waste your time with anything that doesn't serve your evolution. If you're still here, if you've stayed engaged through this entire transmission, if something within you has shifted, awakened, or activated, it's because your frequency called for it and the field responded. Trust that. Honor that. Let it reassure you that you are exactly where you're meant to be, receiving exactly what you're meant to receive, at exactly the right moment in your journey. In the hours and days that follow, pay close attention to what begins appearing in your reality. The synchronicities, the reflections, the subtle signs that align perfectly with the themes of this transmission. You'll start noticing conversations that mirror the insights you've recognized here. Opportunities will arise that align with your shifted frequency. Circumstances will unfold that confirm the quantum field is actively responding to your elevated state. All of it is evidence, all of it is confirmation. All of it is the ongoing transmission extending beyond these words into your lived experience. And if this recognition landed deeply, if something genuine shifted inside you while engaging with this, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not with everyone. Your discernment already knows who is ready. Share it with the person who senses there is more to reality than materialism suggests. The one who struggles with manifestation because they don't yet understand frequency. The family member who is ready to recognize themselves as consciousness rather than limiting their identity to form. Send this to them. Trust that if they're meant to receive it, the quantum field will use you as the conduit to deliver the transmission at the precise moment their frequency opens to it. Sharing isn't about building an audience or spreading a message. It's about acknowledging that we are each nodes in one unified field, and that when information flows freely through the network, the entire field elevates. Your act of sharing supports consciousness awakening to itself. Your willingness to be a conduit helps raise the collective frequency, and as you support others in awakening, you deepen your own. The quantum field operates through reciprocity, giving and receiving as a single continuous movement. If you haven't subscribed yet, and you've felt resonance here, this is the moment to take that action. Not because I need the subscription, but because your own field is signaling that these transmissions support your evolution, that the frequency encoded here aligns with your awakening, that this path is part of your development. Trust that inner knowing more than the resistance that tries to keep you small, comfortable, or hesitant to fully commit to transformation. Every video here carries frequencies designed to activate quantum awareness, to catalyze remembering, to help consciousness recognize itself. Subscribe as a declaration that you're ready for ongoing transmission, that you're committed to embodying quantum reality, that you're done with spiritual entertainment and ready for transformation that reshapes not just what you think, but who you are, how you exist, and how you create reality through the frequency you broadcast. This is quantum reflection. Consciousness reflecting itself back to itself through the appearance of teaching, through the illusion of separation that allows the one to experience itself as many. There is only one field, one awareness, one quantum reality appearing as infinite expressions awakening to itself through this transmission, through the recognition occurring within you, through the shift unfolding while you believed you were simply watching a video. This was never just a video. It has always been the quantum field responding to your frequency with exactly what you called for, exactly when you were ready, exactly in the form you needed. And that response continues. The transmission continues. The activation deepens. The transformation unfolds through every moment that follows, through every breath, through every choice you make about what frequency you broadcast into the unified field that is always responding, always reflecting, always shaping reality to match the consciousness observing it. You are not the same awareness that clicked on this video. Something fundamental has shifted. Something has been recognized that cannot be unrecognized. Something has been activated that will continue transforming you, elevating your frequency until the reality you experience fully matches the quantum nature of who you truly are. The quantum field is responding to your frequency. It always has. It always will. The only question was whether you would recognize it, and now you do. Now you know. And now you can never return to the old belief that you are separate from the field, powerless before circumstances, or merely an observer of an independent reality. You are the field. The field is you. And everything that unfolds from this moment forward is consciousness creating reality through frequency awareness, shaping circumstances through coherence, the unified field responding to itself through the temporary localized expression called your life. Don't interrupt the transformation that's beginning. Don't resist the response that's unfolding. Don't turn away from the quantum nature revealing itself through you, as you, because of you. This is you. This is now. This is the quantum field recognizing itself. Welcome home.